Let's blood. For everything I hoped you would be, Assad.
We are talking I Am Fear. This one is directed and co-written by Kevin Shulman and stars Faran, Tahir, Kristina Klebe as our two main characters. We also have William Forsyth, Bill Mosley, Guinevere Turner and Eoin Macken in small roles. So the story is a kind of a political terrorist movie with a supernatural twist to it is the best way I would describe it. So what we have two storylines ultimately with these two characters. We have this reporter who is kind of this investigative reporter going out and doing highly dangerous interviews with kind of like ISIS members, things like that. And she is captured by one of them and is due to be beheaded on July 4th, which is Independence Day in the States, live on, a streaming platform. And then we have this this guy who was essentially rescued by the CIA from nearly being killed by some bad guys, so to speak. And then he is kind of rescued by the CIA and is given the task of infiltrating this kind of terrorist cell and potentially maybe saving this particular reporter who is being has been captured by them. Things don't go quite according to plan, as you probably would expect. And what will happen, you have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss, first of all, what works with I Am Fear. First of all, I have to say, I think the performances are very good in this movie. I have seen some reviews that kind of slate the acting, but to me the acting here was solid all round. The bigger names here only have kind of small roles, more or less cameos, to be quite honest with you. But our two main leads, I think, do a good job here with some quite kind of heavy material. The movie is also quite shocking in places. We have some deaths on screen that are filmed in a way that is quite gruesome. The whole purpose of this movie is beheadings, really, and kind of slittings of the throat where people are threatened to be beheaded live on camera. And then we do actually see a couple of instances where this starts to happen and things like that. And it's filmed in a way that makes you feel very uncomfortable. So I had to give it props to the filmmakers for showing a gory scene, but making you feel uncomfortable whilst watching it. And it's not kind of like glorifying violence and things like that. It makes it seem poignant, sad, and quite gruesome. The movie has an interesting plot. Put a pin in that because we are going to come back to that one. And the idea here, I feel, is relatively solid. If you have to have a look at this movie as a whole, there are also some outstanding sequences. There's one towards the end of the movie where, I won't tell you which character, but there's a character is trying to escape somewhere in a very kind of dark environment, and the use of kind of sound and lighting here, I think, is an excellent sequence and makes for a very kind of tense few scenes, really. However, let's talk about that plot. Now, I think the idea here for the movie is solid. But, and this is going to be a big but, if you can imagine, the plot of this movie was the picture on a jigsaw. And when you look at it, and the idea of it looks pretty good, yeah? But then you throw the jigsaw on the floor, and then you have to try and tell the story by looking at piece by piece. That is what this movie is like. Now, we've seen this done before. Movies like Memento, Tarantino does it. Obviously, movies that are, we watch them shot out of order and things like this, and it can work. But you have to be a very skilled director here. Now, this director is relatively inexperienced. I believe this is his second feature. Done a few shorts before. And I just don't think he has the experience here to make a cohesive film, because unfortunately this movie is just a real jumble of narrative ideas, and you can't really follow what is going on, unfortunately. Now, when you watch the movie as a whole, I feel you can kind of like get the gist of maybe what's happening, but whilst you are watching it, you are confused as to what is going on. Is this sequence taking place in the present? Is it in the past? Is it a flash forward? Because they're all there, but the movie doesn't really kind of do a good enough job of letting the audience know what is actually kind of going on. So scenes of dialogue are lost because you don't really understand the context of what it's been, what's actually being kind of explained to you here, or what's actually being shown on screen. Now, you could argue, oh, you know, the movie's trying not to hold your hand and stuff like that. And I agree that that can work if you have a skilled filmmaker. And I'll use Memento as the kind of the best example here, because that was a complex film, but you understood the narrative while you were watching it. This one, it is a convoluted mess. And that by far and away is the biggest issue here, is that it's just very difficult to understand what's actually kind of going on here. And because of that, because you get a little lost, you are then losing information that the movie is giving you, and certain scenes won't have as much resonance because it's just trying to be cleverer in the way that it's telling you this story. Do I have any other critiques? I feel that the supernatural element here, I don't think is particularly well handled. Outside of the one sequence, as I've told you, which in a film perspective, in the way it was filmed, is very effective. But I've got to say, I actually thought the supernatural element was a little cheesy, if I'm honest. When you have such heavy material like terrorism, online beheadings, things like this, I got to say, it's a heavy subject matter. But the cheesiness of this kind of supernatural reveal, I think, undercuts it. Now, the title, I Am Fear, the movie's themes here is about fear, paranoia, and that kind of negative mind frame, essentially, and how the human mind can ultimately be your own worst enemy. But I think that message just gets lost in the shuffle because the filmmaker here is trying to make too much of a statement and having this kind of like this narrative flow, this kind of the way this movie has these kind of flashbacks and flash forward stuff peppered through the movie does not work, I don't think. So it makes for a somewhat convoluted viewing experience, but I think if it had been filmed or at least shown in a more of a straight kind of narrative in a linear fashion, or at least maybe have a mostly linear fashion, I feel, it might not have, the director might not be able to say, oh, well, it's kind of, this is not my style, but it would have been a much easier film to people to digest. As it is, it becomes a little bit of a jumble. A little bit like that Jigsaw. So I'll give this movie a 5 out of 10. It has good potential here, solid acting, and I feel a good idea, but it just gets lost in the mix. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.